You make me feel gorgeous. I've got that song in my head. Right. Do, 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 do. Okay. I was going to look today if I had the option to add Chris, but I don't think I do. I thought I would be able to on the laptop, but it does not look like that is possible. So I guess it's just going to be my face, my ears, and talking about my fears. Oh. It's going to be a shadow work kind of video. It's kind of a requested video, and it's kind of a VR to Miss Kellyanne Maddox, because I was watching her video the other day, and I left a comment like, "Oh, like I do," and she was like, "You need to make that video you promised," and I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay, Kellyanne, who I love and adore, I will make a video because you asked me to." No, not really. I really wanted, well, yes, really, but I wanted to talk about this anyway, which is shadow work to do with passion, the passion. Hey, Claire. And we're going to be talking about different kinds of passion with regards to shadow work. It's not just the sexy shadows, the sexy kind, but also the shadow work attached to passion when we're interacting with people who are doing what they're passionate about. They found their calling, they're interacting with their passions, and the kind of like the shadows that this brings out in us and the shadows that it brings out in them. So we're going to be talking about shadow passions on multiple levels. It's not going to be just one kind of shadow passion, shadow work vibe, this thing with this hand motion. So I think we'll start there, because that was more about what Kellyanne's video was looking at. Kellyanne's video was talking about elitism. It was talking about a spiritual course in tarot in particular that was being offered for a very high price. They're fox ears, they're not kitty ears, how dare you. And she was talking about all the angles of that, and having seen how people reacted to the charging for a tarot mentorship, the price point, things like that, and how elitism showed up and the problems with it. And I was listening to her, and I was like, this is kind of something that I have noticed in the vibrations, in the waters across the pond, but not really across the pond. She's in England, so she's a little bit further down the pond to the left. And this is it came into like more organic practice with people being kind of elitist there. The kind of idea that there wasn't enough for everybody. There was kind of like a limited spiritual pool, that kind of vibed up in my last video. That kind of thought came through. And that kind of pulled into this shadow work that comes into when people are doing what they're passionate about. And then passion in general, which takes on a sexual connotation. So if you've been watching my videos, you know that there is a Lilith vibe right now. There's also a Hades vibe again, because, you know, oh, the single Hades, oh, the single Hades. I know that Chris hates that song, but it was Hades. It was not ladies. So there's all this energies around the unseen. There's all these energies around like the non-conformity, the darker gods, and the unaccepted, and then kind of churning those energies up for me. And when those energies are being churned up on kind of like a spiritual vibe, then you see kind of echoes of that within how people are reacting and responding. There's kind of a tug of war thing going on, where you can see reflections of it in how people react to situations. I said Hades, not ladies, so it's not exactly the same song. Hades won't be single once we all eat the pomegranate. I know. If I start finding pomegranates around the flat, then I'll be worried, because we're getting to that point. Anyway, if I disappear off the face of the planet, I've been kidnapped by Hades. You'd come willingly. I know. You can just hear his booming voice every so often. Anyway, so if that comes through on the video, like, that's Hades. Or if you see shadows in your curtains like I do, that's Hades. Anyway, back to the point. Back to the point of the video. So I've noticed that this comes about quite a lot. And there are shadows that, yeah, exactly. Who says it wasn't the other way around? I get that reference, Chris. Nobody else is going to understand that reference. That's in jokes again. We got in trouble for that recently. So I'm gonna have to explain that now. So I was like channeling with Hades, and I like made this joke about him kidnapping Persephone, and he was like, "Who said it wasn't the other way around? And the myth is wrong." And I was like, "Whoa, okay," because there is support in the mythology that Persephone was a goddess of death originally. Like there are to do with her name, and the etymology of her actual name is to do with death. And so there's a thing in mythology that it's very, very possible that Persephone was actually a goddess of death first, and then the myth got turned around. Anyway, that's a side note. So we're talking about shadows of passion and how we can be poked, and when we see other people being really successful about what they're passionate about, particularly if we're not at that level yet, or how that our embracing of our passions can poke the shadows of other people. And it happens to all of us. We are human beings having a human experience, human emotions. It's all perfectly natural. And I'm actually somebody who really, really finds the idea that we should try and get rid of certain emotions really distasteful, even if it's like jealousy and things, because there are lessons in all the emotions. There is a reason for all the emotions. And sometimes jealousy is a great motivator. If we don't get bogged down in the funk of it, like in the toxicity of it, if we take a little bit of poison, just a little bit of poison, and use that to fuel, then we can become more than we were, and we can see where we want to go. And it's interesting to me that the case is not usually that when it happens. People see people who are doing what they are passionate about, and then there's a very unfortunate series of events that seems to happen quite frequently. So firstly, there's kind of like a hostility thing that happens, and then kind of like a degradation kind of thing that happens, like trying to talk somebody down from doing what they're passionate about. And you have people who use this kind of underhanded passive aggressive way, like, are you sure this is what you should be doing? Are you sure you can make a living doing that? Isn't that a hobby? Isn't that not a real job? That kind of vibe comes forward quite a lot, quite easily, and is usually the first reaction of people, because sometimes it comes from a place of some concern, like they're afraid you're not going to make a living, but it also shows and denotes a lack of trust in the individual. Like, this is a person who knows themselves and presumably is putting the effort, time, and research into what they're doing in order to see whether or not they can sustain themselves doing that as a job. And if they can't sustain themselves doing that as a job, then maybe that's a very important lesson for that individual as a human being, as a person, that is not anybody else's to interrupt. I think this is something that I had to learn a while back, because I kind of helped and really brought my sisters up. And there came a point, and I always had this problem because I wasn't actually the parent, so I didn't actually have the clout of being a parent. However, there were stages where I was really freaked out about some of the choices my middle sister made. Like, for example, my middle sister went off to America, and I felt very, very hurt by it for a very long time, that she didn't trust me with that she was going to do this. And I got over that in a number of ways, love being the main one, because I love my sister, but also to, hang on a minute, I will answer that in a minute, Claire, also to allowing my sister to live her own life, to make her own choices, even if I thought it was a bad idea, if I could foresee it being a mistake, if I saw problems with it. Ultimately, the lessons in that path are not mine. And I think the problem for a lot of us is that we're kind of like looking over the fence at other people, and we're giving our opinions. I will answer that as well in a minute. And it's not really our life to be living. So when we're kind of like living or offering advice for other people, usually to their detriment, it's actually showing a shadow of what we're afraid to do, or what we want to be doing and we're not doing, by kind of like trying to influence other people's lives. It's a control thing. It's not good. So I'm going to answer the two questions, and then I'm going to move on. So what if someone is a source of inspiration to you? So taking inspiration from people, it's a problem for me, because I've had "you're such a source of inspiration" be used as an excuse to thieve from me. Theft is not Nice. So the thing is, there's a very blurred line between what inspiration is versus what theft is. So inspiration is difficulty. In terms of, is someone inspiring you a part of your shadow work? It can be. It can be. But like, how are you interacting with it? Are you taking it to a positive place? If somebody has gone and lived their life and they've kind of gone for it, and that inspires you, then that's not a bad thing. Like, but I think the key there is getting back to yourself in what is it that I want most? Like, what is it that I want to do? What is my path? What calls to me? What speaks to my soul? What gets me excited? What really revs my engines, rather than what I think I should be doing, or rather than what everybody else is doing? So for example, when I'm crafting, I don't go looking at what other people are making, with one exception. If I have a new idea, and I'm like, oh, I could do it like this, and I could do it like this, and I could do it like that, and I'll write my idea down, and I'll go online, and I'll make sure it's not been done exactly like I'm doing it, or even close to like I'm doing it. Because if it's been done close to how that looks, I take that as an indicator that I need to go back to the drawing board and do more work. I'm in the minority. I don't know a lot of people who react like this. There are people who do it, because I've been in heart-centered business groups, and a couple of people I know do it. I know Kellyanne does it, for example, that if it's already exists in that kind of thing, then it's already there, and then go back and be better. So then, has Hades ever shown himself to be blonde? I had a recent encounter with an entity who had blonde hair. Generally speaking, Hades has come across as quite dark, and he did come across in a way that wasn't kind of what I expected, though. You kind of, like, the modern interpretation of what Hades looks like is kind of like a thinner, gaunter kind of thing. And when I saw him on a number of occasions, he sometimes does that. Like, he like hoods himself so you can't see him, and he likes that kind of vibe when I get him on a meditational level. But he was much broader when I saw him last. It wasn't like the stereotypical, and I do think that underworld gods in particular, and anyone with that kind of vibe, they like to play with perception. So they like to show up that you're not expecting them to look like it, so it's more than possible. In quick answer to that question. Okay, so going back to the ideas of what passion is and what passion provokes in us in a shadow. So the first reaction, like I've said, is that kind of that doubt that people put in. And doubt, when people do that, especially people we love, is really damaging, because they're like, well, this person loves me, so maybe their doubt is justified, and maybe I shouldn't do this. And that shadow is then really constrictive. It's really unfortunate. It's really kind of painful. Yeah, shifters do that. Shapeshifters. I love shapeshifter energy. It's my favorite. So that's the first thing. And then, unfortunately, then this kind of rolls on in kind of a more aggressive stance, a really nasty stance that can come through when people see other people doing what they want to be doing on some level. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it can be an echo, a mirror of what the person wishes, whether it be us or other people, that they themselves were doing with their lives. So then the jealousy aspect amps up, and we get a kind of aggressiveness, we get a nastiness, we get an unpleasantness, we get a trolling, we get a name calling, we get people who then take kind of like the moral high horse to excuse their behavior towards the other person, to justify taking apart somebody else. And this is a really kind of aggressive way that the shadow comes into play and takes away from what the person is trying to do. And that can be really damaging for everybody involved, because the person who is doing the thing, whatever the thing might be, feels got at. They feel attacked for just being who they are, because people who are living their passion, they've found a place where they're comfortable in themselves enough and have put enough faith in themselves to do what it is that they want to do. And that takes courage, because in a world that is telling us that you should work 9 to 5 and this is what your life should look like, and you should want the car and the house, and these are the things that should matter, and if you're not married by this age, and if you don't have kids by that age, then you're somehow failing the system. To live your own passion is a pure act of spiritual courage, and in all cases, because you're rejecting the kind of dogma, you're rejecting what you've been told you should do, you're rejecting the control that has been placed on you most of your life. When I was growing up, I thought for a very long time that I would be a lawyer. I would probably make quite a good lawyer, to be fair. I can argue most sides of most cases. I can see different perspectives and points of view, and I have a very good research method. But when I got to university and I was initially undertaking law, the general atmosphere, the general energy, and the general opinions that I ran into did something to my brain that I could not morally live with. There was almost everybody there was there to screw over whoever it took to get whatever they wanted. And I looked at this, and this is not why I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to make a change, and I wanted to help people. Maybe helping people is a unusual vibe these days. It's not in with common keeping, but it's what I wanted to do. Now, yes, I want to make a living. Yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I want to be in my own power and all the rest of it. But ultimately, I don't want to be doing that by shitting all over other people. And this is kind of why the inspiration thing irritates me no end, because when people are taking from you, that's not them rising. That's imitation. So elevation, not imitation, is something that I say all the time. Now, how do we deal with that kind of aggressiveness that comes into our sphere when people are telling us, you can't do this job, you're an idiot, whatever it is that someone has told us to try and take away from our shine? And I honestly feel that the only thing is a boundary, is a wall between you and those people, because those people who are coming to you with an aggressive nastiness do not ever have your best in mind, best anything in mind. They want to take away from you. They want you to be smaller. They want you to stop making a noise. They want to be comfortable around you, and they don't want you to be breaking any molds. So unfortunately, the best thing you can do is create boundaries, and depending on who the individual is and how accessible the boundary is to you, is not allowing that into your life too much. Now, that is more easy than not letting them in here, which is a problem. Now, and I'm a Virgo, so I live in my head. I overanalyze everything. I see patterns in everything. It's what makes my magic work really well, but it also lends itself to emotional anxiety, because basically I overanalyze everything all the time and like that. So how do we not let that into our head? We're not always going to win that battle. That's the first thing. And that's perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay that sometimes these things are going to influence you and affect you. It's just that you have to identify where it is, identify what the thought is, and then be like, get the fuck out of my head, thought. Or I'm going to do it anyway. Or I'm going to find a way. I'm going to reject the thought process, the voice in my head, whatever it is that is telling you that you can't, and then come back and be like, you know what, I can, I will, and I must. And that's something somebody said to me a very long time ago as a kid. They heard my mother being beratey about ideas and things, and they were like, quietly, after my mother had left, they were like, just take this mantra, I can, I will, I must, and apply that instead. I can do this. I will do this. I must do this. And for yourself, really. More than anything else, but also because of the impact it can have on the world. So when you're doing something that you're passionate about, it's because it matters to you. Now, who's to say that that's not what you're on this planet to do in this incarnation? If something sings to your soul, something matters to you, the change that you influence in the world is immeasurable sometimes, even if it's just one person. It can make the change of a lifetime to one person. That's really freaking important. Because we don't know the full extent of the impact that we will have on the world, other people, and ourselves by doing what it is that we're passionate about. And other people trying to take away from that is reflections of their shadows about it, and is not an impact, it's not an influence, it's not who you are. So you have to go back and be like, who am I? I don't want to be who everybody else is telling me to be. And my favorite quote of all time is Isodara Duncan, which is, you were wild once here, before they tamed you. And it's about taking back the energy of being a wild individual. So Claire asked to use your anger in a positive way. So I said before that I don't see any emotion as a negative thing. And anger, again, is not a negative thing. So there's a number of different ways that I would use anger. So the first thing is when you have a tribe, you can have honest conversations. If you've read in my blog post, you can go and be like, this is annoying me and it's making me crazy and this person is doing this and help. And you get that venom out, you get it out, because it's perfectly normal for humans to have that response when you're being disrespected. It's perfectly normal. But then you have to kind of like turn that around and look at why it's bothering you, look at the roots of the shadows of it. Why is that freaking you out? Why is that making you angry? So anger can be used in a number of ways. Anger is a fierce motivator. So if I'm really, really angry and I can't shake it, I will exercise or something very, very physical. I will basically change the energy. I will alchemize the energy of anger into something very, very physical. I will blade dance. I will dance. I will get active on a physical level, because anger for me is very tactile. And to the point where I can shake sometimes if I'm angry. Like it's in my hands more than anything. Like sadness and things is in here, and anger is down here, in terms of like a physical manifestation. Screaming too, yes, but death screaming is somewhere between all of the emotions. I death scream, which is on my blog if you want to read about that and know more about that. So I'm not going to explain that in this video. It's all a bit screamy in here. So there's absolutely, you can use your anger in very, very positive ways. Also, anger at a situation, righteous anger, is what changes social change. Well, no, sorry, what is the catalyst for social change. So when enough people are angry about an injustice, the world will listen. When enough people march, when enough people speak out, when enough people defend the rights of other people, when there is a wrathful but justifiable element to that anger, I think that's a very necessary part of human change. That's what boils up and won't allow things to remain the same. It's a catalyst for change. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, depending on history, and kind of those two things are thought constructs depending on your personal perspective. But lots of social change has come off the back of people having enough, being angry enough at things like violence against certain types of people, prejudices, and so forth. So anger can be very productive. Like I said, I don't believe in negative emotions. I don't think that we should suppress anything. I don't think suppression of anything emotional is ever a good idea, because it's in harmony with who you are as a person. It's your passion coming through in a way. And emotions are kind of like the indicators of the soul. It's kind of like letting us know who we are, how we feel. So there is no wrong answers. There are no wrong emotions. I don't agree with that. And that is something that comes up in some spirituality, where people kind of like say that certain emotions should be suppressed and got rid of. No, I would lady don't own that. Lady don't want none of that. So, okay. So let's just flip that into sexuality for a minute, just to sort of tail off the last point, which will probably be another 10 minutes, and then we'll probably have a 30-minute video, because Joey doesn't do short videos, apparently, because she can't stop talking. Virgo problems. Anyway, so sexuality is the other side of this, and it kind of mirrors that passion anyway, because when we say passion, a lot of us think of sexuality, and sexuality has had just, if not more, forms of suppression placed upon its head as us doing what we're passionate about. And the shaming that comes along with sexuality is vast. And I've seen this in circles where like people go after the way people look, the way people are physically presented, whether or not they find attractive or not, and they go after their sex lives and things. I've had this myself with people coming after mine, and I'm like, if you think, well, firstly, if you go after a survivor of sexual abuse trying to shame them about their current sexual state, there's something deeply wrong with you. Deeply wrong with you. Because that kind of nastiness needs attention. There's something very wrong on the inside, and you need to heal. But in general, that, especially with women, but with guys too, what people are doing about their sexuality, what kind of sexuality they embrace and who they're with is like a constant judgment thing that brings up shadows of other people and brings up shadows within ourselves. So this is a little bit veering away from the kind of the VR of things, but it's important because it kind of feeds into, they kind of mirror each other, because again, it's passion. It's an expression of self. It's an expression of soul, and how we express ourselves sexually is something that people come after. They just do. And it's unfortunate. So how do we then deal with that? Well, firstly, it ain't anybody's damn business. As long as you're healthy, happy, enjoying yourself, how you embrace your passion is nobody else's damn business, ultimately. Now, you can talk about it, you can joke about it, you can have a laugh with it, you can present it as something empowered. That's all good things, because you are raising awareness, you're speaking for passion, which, given the Lilith energies, is something that is really in my head right now, which is speak for the passion. Because if we ooh, hi Lilith, that was right up the spine. Speak for the passion. Be passionate, embody that passion, and don't be ashamed of that. That's just a part of who you are. As long as you know, healthy, happy, consent, and all that stuff, because I'm not having any of that kind of argument coming in. Hello from Louisiana. Hello, Gita. Oh, Gita. You have to tell me how to pronounce it properly, because I probably butchered that. So basically embodying your passion, be the passion, feel the passion, live the passion, love the passion, do the passion. All of these things are really important. And why? Because they're expressions of you. And spirituality is expressions of you as both an individual and as a part of the collective whole. We all have passion, unless there's something not quite right in a mental and physical makeup. And, you know, I'm not judging. In fact, I will say there are some people who don't particularly feel impassioned towards other people sexually, but they still feel impassioned for things within themselves, and that's not something that I'm going to be judging about or saying that's wrong in any way. So I just realized that within my own thought process. What I meant is that the problem is, when I talk about these things, is that ultimately someone will be like, but predators though, like I'm justifying that, and I'm not. Like, if anyone's not justifying predators, it's this woman. So basically, passion on a sexual level is an expression of who you are as a soul, as far as I'm concerned. It's sacred, and what you do with it is your choice. Now, me, I am very centric to like the bond of connecting with one person sexually. Like, I like that consumption, almost like being consumed, but not quite. Still separate, but I like the moment of being consumed. I like that connection, that soul level sexuality. That's what I want and need. So there you go. But for me, that is an expression of spirituality. That is sacred. That is holy. It's a coming together. And that's something in modern society which is lost. And I think when we're talking about passion, we have to remember that that's kind of holy as well. Like, passion is holy. So do that. Do that. Enjoy it. Live it. And don't let anyone else tell you you can't. Right, that's going to be it for this video, because we are hitting the 30-minute mark, and that's quite enough yakking for me for one day, because I've got 2 videos coming out now instead of 1. So, much love, stay fluxy, and stay sexy, because you can. Many blessings.